And greetings and welcome to the QCast. Thank you to everyone that's been so supportive of this fun little venture. It's been great. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thanks everyone. This is season 3, episode 3. And I'm really excited to have the brand new head coach of the North Central College Cardinals, Anthony Figueroa, with me today. And Anthony, we've never met. I feel like I should know you because I saw you play a lot of basketball games and I've been very familiar with you, but I don't think we've ever met. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know how busy you are. How's everything going up there?
Oh, no, thank you. Everything's going great. We're just coming off our first home football game last weekend, which was uh, which was a first for me. So, and it was absolutely wonderful. Like it's a different experience up here.
Yeah, I mean the Cardinal football team, number one in the country, a powerhouse. You know, when you think of Mount Unions and Whitewaters, and to think that North Central is atop that mountain right now, pretty amazing what the football program's doing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great, and I mean, it's unbelievable to watch firsthand.
It is. That is a machine. Anthony, it's great to have you on here because it's such a cool perspective to talk to a coach that's just getting started at a new program. And I want to talk through this a little bit. Of course, you're no stranger to the CCIW. We're going to talk a little bit about playing days for the Big Blue as we get into this. But you were announced as the new head coach at North Central May 9th. You started officially June 1st. We just talked. You just made your move up to the suburbs in early August. This has probably been a little bit of a whirlwind for you, right? Like, how's this whole process gone? It's moved very fast, but how's everything going so far?
I mean, it's going well. The people up here are just fantastic. So that really helps. You know, the assistant coaches that were in place are tremendous. So having those guys to kind of lean on early on has been great as well. But right now everything's kind of a learning curve, just learning the ins and outs of everyday campus life. But for the most part, it's been great. I'm undefeated, so there's no real issues.
That's correct. You are undefeated as we speak, which is a great place to be. Um, the decision to make this move, I want to talk about that a little bit as we get into this. For those that don't know, Anthony was the head coach at Parkland Junior College before this, and I mean, did extremely well. You get a record of 221 and 79, and last year you were 23-8. You won the NJCAA Central District Championship, advanced to the national tourney. So you were very successful, Anthony, where you were. When the North Central job opens, talk me through the decision to pursue that. I know that's a complicated thing, and coaching is figuring out how to make these moves, but to talk about the decision to pursue the job.
Well, there's just a lot of factors that go into it. When we have two young kids, we have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and you know, the Naperville School District is very appealing. The city of Naperville, um, everything with North Central just is a huge attraction. So when you talk about the campus itself being right next to downtown Naperville, the academics, the athletic success, what Todd had done here, for almost the last 20 years is great. Now I have to follow that, unfortunately,
Right.
but um, there were some similarities with the institutions in terms of both places caring a lot about athletics, and it shows in the success of multiple teams, not just men's basketball, not just football as you alluded to, but our most successful team here is the cross country and
Yeah.
track program. It's ridiculous. So it was. I mean, there were a lot of different factors. There's just not very many negatives about being at North Central.
Yeah. When you line that up, when you think of, in no particular order, the location of North Central being in Naperville. When I think of suburban Chicago, I think of Naperville. to me, that's the ultimate place, right? So you got the location, you got the commitment to athletics, you got a great school, um, you have again a track record of success across multiple sports teams there. It really is a pretty darn good fit, isn't it? From when you start stacking all the factors up.
It is, and again, once you meet the people, you see why, you understand why. and makes you want to be here, makes you want to come to work every day.
All right, let's talk a little bit. I want to go backwards here, and then we'll get into your team and kind of how you're approaching this process. But I believe you grew up in the Champaign area. Do I have that correct? You played at Champaign Centennial,
Yep.
and I know you ended up at Chicago State because it was there. From there, you transferred to Millikin. Coming out of high school, talk a little bit, if you would, about what were your college options at the time, and how did you end up on the south side of Chicago there at Chicago State?
So the options were kind of, they were kind of odd. I was, when you look back at it, I was I guess, a slightly above average high school player. But like every other high school kid, you have that D1 thing going on in your head. I was recruited by a few smaller, D1s, um, one random D2 because there was a Scott Nagy, who's now the head coach at Wright State, was on a D2 staff. He's from Champaign. So he had recruited us a little bit. And then Millikin was recruiting me in high school. I do remember that. But the big connection was our high school coach in college. He's in the Hall of Fame at Western. One of his college teammates was the athletic director at Chicago State at the time. So there had been multiple guys from our area that had actually went up there to play before we did. So that was kind of the main connection there.
And then you played at Chicago State for 2 seasons. I think it was like 96 and 97. And then you came to Millikin and played 2 years. And I think that was 99 and 2000. Um, Talk through that. How did you end up transferring to Millikin? What was what was the decision to leave Chicago State, and then why Millikin?
It's kind of like it's a lot of guys' story when they transfer. Um, Millikin had recruited me pretty hard in high school. I had visited the campus in high school. It's a nice campus. Um, it was really close to Champaign. At the time that I transferred there, I had no intention on playing basketball. Um, I spent a year at home, took some classes at Parkland, uh, and my intent was just to go on and finish my degree at one of three schools. It was either going to be Millikin, it was either going to be Illinois State, or it was going to be Illinois Wesleyan. So those were the three schools just because of the distance. I had a younger brother living at home that I wanted to be close to, and I ended up going to Millikin, and then got roped into playing somehow. I got that itch. Next thing you know, I'm back on the court.
Well, you played on some really good Millikin teams. You played for Tim Littrell, and there were some really good Big Blue teams in that era. I can't remember all the guys, but for some reason, Brad Skaronsky, that name rings a bell to me. I could still hear the Millikin PA guy saying Skaronsky's name, and it was a really tough place to play. I remember traveling there with the Titans, just in the stands, or maybe I was doing the radio at the time. I can't remember, but I think Millikin had it going pretty good at that point. Um, what are your fondest memories of your time playing for the Big Blue during that 99 and then 2000, those seasons?
It was probably more about just the guys on the team and how like connected and close we were. I mean, we essentially did everything off the floor together. There was a group of us that were, just pretty tight and still are. Like I'm still good friends with Todd Kelly. I'm still good friends with Mike Steers. Still talk to Brad and some other guys every now and then. So, I think the reason why we were good was because we were actually friends. Like we liked each other. We
Yeah.
hung out after court. Um, and I think that obviously, kind of trickled down to our on the court performances and our connectivity there. But it was probably more stuff just off the floor, like the bus rides and these crazy Uno games we used to play on the bus where everybody was cheating. Um, we used to have big spades tournament. We spend a lot of time together, like off the court.
As a player at Millikin, you earned your way onto the second team All CCIW your last year at Millikin in 2000. And when you go back and look at those all conference teams, as always in the CCIW, they're loaded. Like I was looking at who was on the third team, like Antoine McDaniel was on the third team. And you did so, you were not a big scorer, but you were maybe the best defender that I've seen. I think I've been watching the CCIW now for 32 years, 33. maybe the best defender I've ever seen. Talk through you as a lockdown defender player for the Big Blue.
Well, it was simple. If you can't score, you better do something to earn your keep to stay on the floor. So, I had a lot didn't need to use a lot of energy on offense, so I could use the max amount of energy on defense. Uh, I don't know. I think it's just a mentality and an attention to detail that some players tend to get, and some others don't as much on the defensive end. Um, and then I don't know, words like pride factor or just kind of taking things personal. Um, I probably was really good at internalizing some things and taking some things personal with other players, and just kind of that kind of culminated into games and just trying to make life as difficult on some guys as possible.
The best defensive performance I've ever seen. At the Shirk Center in 2000, probably January or February, one of the two. It's probably later, probably February. You held Corey Kuhn to 4 points. So he was the CCIW MOP. He was a first team All American, and it's the lowest point total of his career. He scored 4 points. He probably came into that game averaging 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there. Um, do you remember that game? Do you remember playing in that game and holding
I
him to 4 points?
I remember like the stat because it was made a huge deal. I won't be so arrogant as to say like I did that. Like if a player of that caliber has a night like that, he's probably just off. It was his worst night ever, combined with you know our team having to like pay a lot of attention to him. Everybody knew. I mean, when Corey played, you had to pay a lot of attention to him. So I mean, I can remember some things about the scout, and I know what we were trying to accomplish, and you know, we got it done that night, and he had an off night. But I also know the next time we played, he didn't only have 4 points.
Right. That was the game. I think you guys beat the Titans, which essentially ended their season. Final game of the year. It's weird the funny stuff you remember. Like I remember Corey Kuhn stepped on the half court line, and it was like an over and back. So these things are all stuck in my head. But you played on really good teams at Millikin that were hard to beat. And I wanted to start there as we talk about you as a coach. I had John Baines on last week, and I asked him. He called himself a role player, which I think's fair. And I said, John, is it easier to be a coach coming from like a role player perspective versus like when a superstar becomes a head coach, like when Larry Bird became a head coach, he looks at the world through different eyes. Um, does the fact that you kind of had to find your way on a team, Anthony, and find your way to contribute? You said you weren't a huge scorer, but you played a huge role. Does that help you in terms of coaching mentality and seeing the floor, or is that not a thing?
Well, I think it starts with just being humble and wanting your players to be the same in terms of that. You can if you're not humble, the game will humble you.
Right.
So, if you ever get too high on yourself, it's coming. Like, it's gonna humble you. So, when you are a role player, like John alluded to, like I was, I think you just sometimes you have a different appreciation and a different humbleness about the game and understanding, what star guys do and what role guys do and how everybody does have a piece to the puzzle, that it's not just the guys that are averaging 20 or more that are important, that those role guys can win you championships and help you compete at a high level.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. I do think there's something to understanding that side of it, that maybe lends itself really nicely to leading people. Um, the culture you're building at North Central. I know that at Parkland you had to build a culture over a long period of time, which you had in place, and it was very successful. Now you take over a program that's been doing very well, right? So every year North Central is in the mix every year. They're coming off a season where they beat Illinois Wesleyan in the conference tournament. Um, you always look at the top of the leaderboard in the CCIW standings. North Central is always right there, and certainly in the tournament, they're always right there. Um, Here you come into the front door. What's the culture now you're trying to build as you take this thing over?
Just I just want us all to be on the same page. For the veterans here, it's going to be different. And so trying to make that kind of learning curve, or I don't know if that's the right word, but just make it as little as possible, while then instilling in some of the young guys, hey, this is how things will be moving forward. You know, it's very difficult when you talk about a culture shift off a program that's been successful. Like, because why would you need to shift the culture? And I don't even know if that's the right term. I don't even know if that's what we're doing. You know, I've had the discussion with some players already. Like, I know Todd Reardon isn't here, but some things are going to be the same. This good programs have things in common. It's a lot of players. Oh, the coach, well, it's good programs seem to be very similar. So, some subtle differences, probably in our personalities, and just the way we will attack each day. But uh, the culture here is one of winning. And again, that's from the athletic department. That's
Right.
not just men's basketball. So there's not a whole lot to change when it comes to the expectation of winning, and just making sure our guys understand what I view as the steps in that, what winning is all about and how you go about it.
It is kind of tricky though when you're coming into a situation that has been so successful and you're replacing, the guy, Todd Reardon, 312 and 55. I remember when Scott Trost took over for Denny Bridges, and this is my interpretation, but I feel like he tried very hard to have people understand that a lot of things wouldn't change. I'm coming in to improve a few things over here, but I'm going to leave everything alone. And that maybe in the first year that kind of hurt him. Like he was trying too much to not rock the boat. It's kind of tricky coming into something so successful, isn't it? Is that something that you've thought about a little bit as you figure out, kind of find your way here?
I mean, not so much. It's, you know, I'm gonna we're gonna do it the way we do it, and hopefully it works. You know, will we be able to duplicate what Todd did? I don't know. That's tough. Like, that's
Yeah,
that's very rarely been done. In
right.
a lot of good programs. Ron is doing a great job at Wesleyan. I will he have the court named after him like Denny?
Right.
That's a very tough thing to follow, but I think that you can still be successful while not necessarily doing it the exact same way, or having the same amount of success per se.
Yeah, fair point. I think, um, in a lot of ways, sometimes you want to take over a great program, right? And maybe coming in the door, sometimes it's easier in some ways to take over the program that's having some struggles. But I think you're walking into such a great situation there. And let's talk about, first of all, when I think of the best players in Division 3, I think the most underrated guy in the country last year was Matt Helwig, who, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt is returning this year, correct? He will play this year, correct?
Correct.
I mean, here's some crazy numbers. This is a stat line. So Matt averaged 24 and a half points, 7.8 rebounds, 2.9 assists. He shot 520 from the field, 520. And again, this isn't a 6'7" low post guy. He shot 520 as a perimeter guy. And he shot 432 from three. So, when you talk about taking over a team and trying to build pieces, Anthony, it's got to feel pretty good to get off the bus with Matt Helwig. Talk a little bit about your
Well,
senior superstar.
and don't forget he shot 90 from the free throw line as well. So he's a
Yeah,
50, 40, 90 guy. Like,
right.
his numbers are essentially video game numbers.
Yeah,
The kids are playing 2K with his numbers.
right.
Um, I think the best thing about him is his maturity. Obviously, he's an older guy. Um, he's kind of got it figured out. He's very low maintenance. I think he understands exactly what he wants to accomplish on a day-to-day basis, let alone long term. Um, but that is the beauty of taking over a good program from a good coach, is that he left you good players.
Right.
So I think I'd rather have it that way than take over the program
Right.
that's in shambles and the players are not so good. Um, but I mean, Matt leads the charge of several good players that will be returning and helping us win games.
When you got there, I mean, I I assume there wasn't a ton of time to make additions to the recruiting class coming in, but maybe there was. Is there anyone that, since you started your employment there on June 1st, did you add any recruits that were kind of your guys to this team? Or I mean, I assume it was too late, right?
No, I wouldn't label anybody as my guy. Again, I talked about the coaching staff earlier. Coaching staff had done a wonderful job of keeping some guys in tow while there was that ambiguity of who was going to get hired.
Right.
Um, so like Vince in particular, Vince Kmiec in particular, he's very good at what he does. Um, and so I wouldn't label anybody as my guy. Now that may be more my guy now that we've built some
Right.
relationships and talked a lot. But the class was pretty much set. Has some good players in it that we're excited about, and we're eager to get to October 16th for us to start practice.
You do have a strong staff there, and you talked about Vince Kmiec. Pretty great luxury to have such a polished, successful assistant on your staff. Talk about kind of the role that Vince has been playing for you as you've been making this transition into the program.
I mean, we just attack things together on a daily basis. I think that the mark, if you want to be a leader, and this goes back to the role player thing, most role players had somebody better than them. And, to be a good leader, you have to know how to be led, and you have to know what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And, having Vince on the staff has been great. Both of our experiences as players in the CCIW, both of our experiences coaching in the CCIW, his experience being an alum, those things, those are immeasurable. So to have him, on staff is just a tremendous asset. There's no other way to go around it.
Yeah, that's, I mean, so critical nowadays to have a great staff. You've got that there. Talk a little bit, Anthony, about the difference in the kids that you're recruiting. I think you'd agree there's a pretty sizable difference between the young men that you were going after at Parkland, and people go to junior college for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're looking for a little extra development time. Maybe it's a guy that's really looking for that Division I scholarship. He's going to play a couple years and move on. There's a lot of different reasons that you would go to Parkland, which is a great program. CCIW recruiting kids at North Central, I think you'd agree it's a little different. You're looking for the 4-year player. First of all, am I right? Is it different? Are you recruiting a different type of kid? And then if so, like how do you make the transition from all those years at Parkland now back to recruiting in the CCIW?
I don't think I'm recruiting a different kid. Again, some of the similarities in the institutions also involve academics. Parkland everybody assumes as a junior college that the academics are not so high, but you have to remember Parkland's in Champaign,
Right.
so the proximity to the University of Illinois makes it a little different. The amount of doctorate instructors that you have on Parkland's campus is probably more than the average junior college would have because of the proximity to the University of Illinois. And the way we recruited there from an academic standpoint was probably different than a lot of other JUCOs. Hence why our record is different than a lot of other JUCOs there.
Right.
So from an academic standpoint, we're not really going after a different guy. Maybe there'll be less dunks, but that's probably it. We ran into some situations where we'd be recruiting a kid and they would be being recruited by Wesleyan. That happened several times.
Sure.
Just because of the nature of the area. And, if I'm recruiting a player that Wesleyan's recruiting, I'm probably down the right path. So the location of the recruiting may change because it'll probably be more, above I-80 here, where not so much in Champaign, it was a little bit more spread out. But the type of kid who we're targeting, I don't see that changing much.
That's got to be a huge advantage because of the kid that you were recruiting at Parkland having the same type of profile as a kid that you're going to bring to North Central. I think there's a lot of situations where someone coming from a junior college to the CCIW that it would be a jump, and so that's got to be a nice place to come in. You've got coaching contacts all over the state ready to roll. You've been recruiting kids in the same places. Certainly, you hit Chicago and you hit Champaign and Central Illinois. It has to really help to walk into this job with that kind of network built up. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it makes you feel comfortable that you can recruit the state from top to bottom. That you do, over the last 10 years of being a head coach, I've met a lot of high school coaches and a lot of AAU coaches. Much like, I mean, every other coach in the CCIW. Like, Baines knows everybody from top to bottom. He gets out in
Yep.
Indiana,
Yep.
so your competition is still doing the same thing you are, but there is a comfort level.
Talk a little bit, Anthony, if you would, about the CCIW. Again, you played in it. You coached for a while at Millikin as an assistant, so you know the league really well. Um, it's pretty crazy. When you think about each year, at least the top three or top 25 candidates, maybe down to four. Every year, you've got teams going into the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, often the Final Four. So when you think about coming back in the league now as the head coach, and you think about all of these great programs, the Wheatons and the Augustanas and the Elmhurst and down the line. What's your take on the league now competing as a head coach?
I mean, nothing is, in my opinion, not much has changed since I played years ago, and it's the same. Like this is the best Division III conference in the country. That's the way I've always felt personally. I know that's the way the guys in the league feel. And if you want to use, the 2022 tournament as an example, when you have, I believe, three teams in the Sweet 16, two in the Elite Eight, and then one playing in the national championship, it's hard to argue that. Now, there's some other good leagues, absolutely. But the CCIW is definitely, for lack of a better term, a Power Five
Right.
Division III conference in the country. Um, like I said, we feel it's like it's the premier Division III conference in the country. The competition is so high. It's a physical league. It's a well coached league. Um, so from a standpoint of me coming back in, you just look forward to the challenge. That if you're a competitor, this is the place you want to be because you're gonna have to compete every Wednesday and Saturday. You play those conference games, and you better have your scout on point. You better have your guys ready, both mentally and physically, if you want an opportunity to win. And then if you do put yourself in a position where you're competing for a CCIW regular season championship, you're one of the best teams in the country.
Right. Yeah, when you think about competition, it seems like maybe the common thread that I've noticed with coaches, even if it's obvious in their personality or if it's not, it seems like they're all competitive people. And as a competitor, Anthony, is it fair to say like one of the draws to the job was getting in the mix in the CCIW and competing in that great mix of men's basketball programs? Is that correct to say that I mean, as a competitor, that's fun. Like that's what you're kind of,
Oh,
made to do.
absolutely. You don't. I don't know who gained something from beating up on Little Sisters of the Poor or whatever. No, I want to compete and I want to beat the best. Like that's what competition is. That's what a lot of good players will thrive off of. So I'm just looking forward to the challenge.
When do things start? I know some of the teams are starting practice around October 15th. When do you guys get to lace them up this year?
We'll start on the 16th.
So
We'll
October
shoot back
16th.
today. Yeah.
And how does the preseason, how do you set that up? Every coach does this a little different, but you'll probably start playing a game in fairly early November, the way the schedules work now. As a new coach coming in, you got a lot of stuff to put in, right? It's not like Todd Reardon coming back and everything's the same. You've got limited time here in the preseason to get ready to play a basketball game. How do you attack that period of those precious few weeks?
Making sure our players understand that when they do, do their thing on their own, during these early months, that they have to do it with a purpose. Because I have explained to the guys, like, we're behind the curve because of me, because I'm new, we're behind the curve. When when Carthage, Elmhurst, Wesleyan, Augie, Millikin, when all these schools walk into their first practice, they have the same guy. The players, the veteran players, gonna be like, "Oh, I remember this. We did this." It's
Right.
it's us in North Park that have new leadership and are going to be doing some things different. So you're almost kind of starting behind the curve, even though we return a lot of guys, which is great. There's going to be some new things that will make our climb a little bit rougher, just to get on the same page and stay in rhythm.
Final question, and then we'll start to wrap up. And I appreciate all your time. In terms of your playing style, or sorry, your coaching style, like the kind of product that you put on the floor. Again, I picture, from remembering you as a player, I picture a hard nosed, physical, defensive minded team, which, by the way, North Central under Todd Raridan always was. I can picture North Central playing like Anthony Figueroa did back in 1999, but I don't know that to be true. What is your kind of your coaching philosophy and the type of team? For all I know, you play the Grinnell style. I have no idea. Like, what do you put on the floor?
Um, so at the junior college level, you have a lot of turnover. You have a guy for a year or two, and then they're gone. They get placed. You bring somebody in new. So every year you're almost replacing half the team, if not more. So one thing we were good at was adjusting to our personnel. So it's not like we were a Syracuse style where we're only recruiting this style of kid, we're only playing
Right.
2 3 zone. No, we had to recruit good kids that fit what we thought could help us, and then kind of mold around them. I just always hope that when somebody watches one of our teams, that obviously they think we play hard, that we're disciplined, that we're unselfish. And if we're doing those three things, 3 or 4 things, then I think we'll be competitive. I can't say for certain that we're going to do this and we're going to do this until we actually get to practice and see how some of these things work. Because I could want to do one thing and it doesn't fit the players as a whole, and then we need to make a turn. Because there's no point in trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole just because that's what I want. That's not the way this works. You do have
Yeah.
to conform to your players if you really want to win.
Yeah, it's a great point. Is the best coaches, no matter what their style is, you give them a certain player, and the best coaches find a way to make that player work, right? So that's very well said. On my end, I'm going to ask you for any final thoughts, but I'll just say it's great to have you back in the league, man. Like I think you were a much more impactful player than you give yourself credit for. Second team all conference in the CCIW because you played hard, were tough, and played great defense and made a big basket here. And that's pretty darn awesome. It's great to have someone that's got your history as a player and then a coach in the league back, taking over a great situation, man. It's North Central is such a great program. So I wish you the best of luck in getting this thing where you want it to be. You've got a lot of North Central fans, Division III fans that'll be tuning in here. Anthony, I'll give you the final thoughts here. What would you like to say to those folks tuning into the QCast today?
I mean, we're just excited. We're excited to get started. Like I said, October can't get here, quickly enough. This no contact during the preseason, it can be a little, if I had hair pulling, just because especially as a new guy, you're just eager to get started. So I'm just excited, and hope that we can continue the great tradition that's been established here.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And again, best of luck to you. I look forward to seeing you in a gym somewhere along the way this season. And good luck to you, okay?
All right, thank you.
Guys, that is Anthony Figueroa. He's the head men's basketball coach at North Central College, the Cardinals. That's QCast Season 3, Episode 3. Look forward to talking to everyone next time. Anthony, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.